Lewis Hamilton will finally start the simulator work with Ferrari, and this is a huge development in the integration with the Maranello team because it was one of the biggest weaknesses of the 7-time world champion in the past. However, now that a lot is at stake and now that Hamilton will have a mountain to climb in order to get on the same level with Leclerc in terms of driving style, could we see the Brit commit to something he wouldn't have done with Mercedes? And more importantly, how will that affect his tenure in Ferrari? One of the most important things that Hamilton could have done regarding his move to Ferrari is the simulator work, which he desperately needs in order to get in touch with the feeling of the car that he'll be driving from 2025 onwards. Of course, there is the 1,000-kilometre 4-day test in Barcelona that Ferrari have scheduled a private session for the 7-time world champion, but it's going to be with the F1 75, the 2022 Challenger. The simulator work provides a lot more feelings about the car, and we've seen how team principals have praised drivers like Mick Schumacher and Sebastian Buemi, who have worked hours and hours behind the simulator in order to find the smallest flaws of the car. Hamilton will do this himself from 20th of January, and with the 2025 car being 99% different compared to the SF24, it's no secret that both of the drivers would want to get their feet on the ground as soon as possible. Vasseur has talked to Auto Racer about the expected behaviour of the car, and of course part of the answers that we in the Ferrari fans are seeking will be given by Leclerc and Hamilton themselves after the simulator test. As of now, there is no special program planned for either Hamilton or Leclerc when it comes to the simulator work, but the goal is more than obvious. Get to learn everything about the changes of the car and make sure that the leap you've done is bigger than everyone else out there. This is something that Leclerc expressed as a firm belief, as the Monegasque driver stated that the next world champion in Formula 1 is going to be Ferrari, whether that would be in the drivers or in the constructors championship. The competitiveness of the Project 677, as it's called right now, will be found out in Bahrain, as Vasseur revealed. But these tests are pushing the boundaries of the new concept, and they will definitely make sure to reveal every single flaw that they could polish before they hit the tarmac in the first race in Australia. Of course, the simulator runs can only do so much because, if you remember correctly, Mercedes were unable to predict the porpoising phenomenon on their simulator, so it doesn't mean that if the simulator runs for Hamilton go well, they would automatically mean good news for Ferrari too. It would just mean that they are moving in the right direction, but they would have to keep the cautiousness to the maximum level possible. A very important thing to note here is that Hamilton is not known as a driver who loves to do simulator work. He has done so with Mercedes only in the most desperate times, when they were trying to extract performance out of the zero pod design. But when he saw that it made absolutely no difference at all and that the team will just stick to it anyway just because they believed there was more potential to extract from the concept, that eventually forced Hamilton and Serra out of the team. What this does, on the other hand, is increase the competitiveness between Hamilton and Leclerc to a greater level, because both of them would have to prove to their respective fan base that they are not here to play games, rather to win races. Vasseur, however, would much rather have this sweet headache of having two drivers fight for 1-2 than fighting for anything less than the championship. When talking about this, the team principal of Ferrari said, "Yeah, I prefer to fight for 1-2 than for 19-20, that is clear, and I think it's also part of the performance clearly. The last 2 years I let them race on track, and it was for the benefit of the team, because the emulation that we created like this was part of the recovery when we had tough times, and they had huge respect between them, and we had a good moment with Carlos' father in Fiorano, and it was very nice. It's part of the performance of the team." But with a car that is going to have a changed concept and a 99% different philosophy, it's practically a ground zero start for both of the drivers, which might benefit Hamilton a bit more than we might assume. Not that the car is going to be undrivable for Leclerc all of a sudden, but he would have to get used to some changes, which is something he didn't have to do in the past couple of months to a great extent, as Ferrari have kept themselves to a more traditional approach. It's still a huge unknown as to whether or not the Maranello team will make the needed leap to compete with McLaren and to tackle them down, but what is important is that the confidence in the team is really ecstatic, and that's why situations like the simulator runs are going to boost the energy and the morale of the Maranello workers to a really great extent. When talking about this, Leclerc said, "As I said, it's all relative. Everybody within the paddock. There is not one team that is getting worse from one year to the other, but it's how much of a step forward the others have done. So it all really depends on others as well. But on our side, I have zero doubts that we will make a step forward next year, 2025, and the 1 year after that as well. But then I don't know what the others will do. Just one day after testing the car in the simulator, Hamilton will go to Barcelona and complete the TPC rule with the F175 from 21st to 23rd of January, if the conditions in the Spanish city allow it. This would be the first time that we are going to see a red car with the number 44 on it, which should mark a very iconic period that is yet to come for the Maranello squad. The goal for Hamilton is loud and clear: make sure that you didn't come to Ferrari to retire and win the record-breaking championship with the team that Michael Schumacher won 5 titles with. And while this might be a bitter feeling for many Ferrari fans, it's also something they would cheer for with great dignity, because it would be the first championship since 2007. However, there are many who believe that Hamilton's integration in Ferrari is going to see a lot of obstacles, because his feedback to the engineers is an area in which he doesn't really excel. Quite the contrary. Ralf Schumacher made a very bold statement that the 7-time world champion, although an excellent driver of his own, is probably too old for these cars and cannot adapt to the modern era where the cars are getting heavier and harder to drive. Elaborating further to this extent, the brother of the other 7-time world champion said, "Vasseur won't really be able to help Hamilton, just as Toto Wolff couldn't this year. Neither of them is responsible for the design of the car. In conclusion, Lewis has to adapt to the driving characteristics of the car and not the other way around. Today the cars are heavier and slower to drive. There is less mechanical grip. That means you have to change your driving style, especially in the braking zones." And that is exactly where Lewis lost time to Russell. It was particularly evident in qualifying that Lewis often no longer knew exactly how to brake. That is why he often had problems hitting the apex. He was used to braking extremely late, but that was no longer possible with the Mercedes. Furthermore, Ralf expressed fears that Hamilton would lose around 0.3 per second to his new teammate Leclerc, because he won't be used to the driving style of the Monegasque driver, and of course this is something that would put a lot of pressure on Hamilton, because he will not have a grace period of adapting to the machinery before he starts to deliver the results. Everyone in Maranello will want to see him perform at the very best from day one, and this is why Hamilton's work in the simulator is extremely important. With all this in mind, what do you think about Hamilton's simulator work with Ferrari? And more importantly, do you think that it would give him a much needed advantage over Leclerc, who would be eager to prove that he is the next champion of Ferrari and not Hamilton? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the serious trouble that F1 and its drivers have found themselves in, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.